In June 2016, we held our second EPIC convening on the issue of income volatility, which destabilizes the budgets of nearly half of American households. Volatility has numerous causes, and employers and employment policy will play an important role in addressing it. This video captures part of the conversation related to employment, including the importance of employee training, engagement, scheduling stability, and the provision of benefits.
You know, one of the ways the economy has changed a lot is the quality of work that people are able to find, and the way people think about managing work. One of the things we think that is really sort of a miss in terms of the conversation between workers and employers is, you know, a lot of times companies are really focused on how do I think about, instead of thinking about labor as a cost, how do I think about investing in the workforce? How do I think about building the workforce that's going to be productive over the long term rather than minimizing what my expense in the short term, right? And so I think when we start to see people shift from this short-term profit maximizing perspective to a long-term sort of value creation perspective, then we can see possibilities open up for investing in workers in ways that work for the company and work for the workers and work for the economy and society overall.
Right. So one of the things I can imagine when I hear you say that is, for me, a better quality analyst can really move the needle. Right? So an average analyst versus a very high quality analyst, gigantic difference. If I ran a retail store, awesome, amazing cashier, everyday cashier, I'm not so sure that moves the needle. And so I guess I'm wondering about that, right? Where living in a country where so many people are not employed in positions that have the same kind of upside that I'm describing for my organization, how do you get a much lower skilled, focused corporation making investments in workers where it's unclear, right, that difference is really there?
If you don't really engage the workforce, if you don't invest in them and train them and so they know your products and can do that level of work, then you're not going to maximize what they can do. One CEO of a retail company put it to me really great. He said, you know, you can require about 35% of effort, but the other 65% is optional. And if you want it, you've got to motivate it, and you've got to really think about how you motivate people to bring their best.
Darrick, one of the things we talk about in sort of a source of income volatility and why it's growing is the sense that worker bargaining power has eroded over the course of the last 20 or 30 years. What role do you think increasing worker bargaining power can have in dealing with income volatility?
Well, one, it would give workers themselves an agency in the issue of income volatility. As we know, perhaps all income volatility is not a problem. The problem is not having choice. And if you're of meager economic circumstance and you have downturns in your income, then you are in a desperate situation. So if we could somehow have a society where workers have increased bargaining power, and the biggest source of loss of bargaining power is the threat of unemployment. So if workers had true alternatives where they can truly bargain with an employer, that we would be better off, and a lot of these problems would take care of themselves.
I mean, what we're seeing is historically low participation rates. Even today, even for people who are participating, I mean, we have about 6 million people who say they're in part-time jobs. They want full-time jobs, they're not getting them. So there's still a lot of slack in the labor market, even excluding the unemployed. And I think at that point, you're not so much about, what do I need to negotiate with my employer? It's more about, I need the first job out there, and I need to have some income, and it may be volatile because I'm juggling together 4 part-time jobs, but I need that income. And I think so what we need right now are policies that would actually get people into jobs. And I think one of the successful programs that I have seen and that I've been writing about are sort of, wage subsidy programs where employers are given training and, incentives to provide training to people out of the pool of unemployed, maybe out of the pool of workers who haven't had a job in a long time. But you say, okay, the government is going to partially cover the cost of having these people come into your job, you provide them the training, and then 6 months later, we take away the subsidy or the credit that we're providing, but you hire these people full time. And I think it's working out, really well in some places because employers are finding people with the right skills. They're training them for the skills that they need, and these workers are getting full-time jobs.
I would agree with the part where you said we need more jobs.
Right.
My solution would be bolder and more direct.
Yeah.
I think the federal government can be an employer of not even last resort, but I believe in a federal job guarantee. That would be the most direct way of increasing labor bargaining power because the threat of unemployment would be removed. And I think there's plenty of productive work that needs to be done in our country, particularly with regards to human and physical infrastructure.
What we're seeing is this ability of workers to easily transition from one job to another. Now, there was a time 50 years ago when employers heavily invested in training because they realized that they would be the ones reaping the benefits of that training. And now we don't have that economy. People job hop all the time. You said, that's the way they bump up their incomes. That's the way they negotiate with their employers. And so it's really become the situation where employers are like, okay, we are going to train you. You learn quickly on the job. But we don't have those extensive sort of long-term training strategies that used to work before, because we know that once we train you, you're more employable by someone else.
I would argue that we need to shift from our focus of trying to cajole the private sector to try to get them to do what we want them to do. Let the market work as it works. The private sector is going to do what they want to do. I say what we need to do is give workers economic rights. That's the next evolution in our democracy, that as a citizen, you're entitled to certain economic rights. And then I'll also say that when we talk about government investment in jobs, we have historical precedent of large growth as a result of these jobs. We can turn back to the New Deal as well as World War II as incidents in history where we've had huge growth in the American economy, and it was largely the result of not only directly employing workers, but you had the additional stimulus effect of building infrastructure, both physical and human, that led to additional jobs and growth in our overall economy.
Well, for me, I think the key to addressing income volatility is really to stabilize employment. So within the scheduling policy kind of arena, there are a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, relatively complex policies that are being proposed legislatively. One that I think is particularly important is what we call predictability pay. And what that means is when employers post the schedule, if they make changes at the last moment, so oftentimes workers will, get their schedule and then they'll find out the day before, your shift's been canceled, you have a shift added, and that just really, in addition to making people's income volatile, throws their lives into chaos. So predictability pay is meant to disincentivize employers from making those last minute changes.
One of the things we've been talking about here with EPIC and with this conversation around income volatility is how do we create stability for people in their financial and economic lives. And historically, sort of one of the ways people have had stability in their lives is through not just the income from their work, but the benefits that come with their work, right? The insurance that helps them protect against disability, the paid sick time and things like that that help them when they need those time off to care for a sick child or sick relative, things like health insurance that help with those kinds of risks. And so as benefits have become less involved with work itself becomes less stable. And one of the questions we're sort of grappling with is, what's the right way to think about the provision of benefits that people need that are going to be really a part of dealing with more volatile economic circumstances? How do we organize benefits so that they can be available to people so that they can manage some of the risks. They can manage individually the risks that they can, but not everybody can manage all risks. And how do we figure out what that benefit space looks like?
Is it time to rethink how we're delivering benefits?
We are doing benefits differently than we have, whether that's in the pension space and defined contribution, moving from defined benefits to defined contributions, or in healthcare, where we're sort of seeing this divide between high deductible plans and more traditional plans. We're just seeing lots of differences, and more people taking advantage of benefits that aren't workplace-based. Mm-hmm. People aren't working for the same employer as long. Their employers are changing. We're seeing sort of mergers and acquisitions, and so the idea that people are sort of starting with an employer and sticking with that employer throughout their career is more of an anomaly than maybe it was, if it ever really was the sort of traditional model, but less than it was 30 or 40 years ago. So we are changing. Now, that whether we're thinking it through, whether this is strategic, whether we've thought through how this is going to sort of play out, and especially for low-income workers whom, maybe they are working at 2 or 3 different employers and none of them really offer good benefits, or one does and one doesn't, or a spouse ends up taking a lesser job in order to get the benefits. So, I mean, we see lots of juggling within families right now.